Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL. We're gonna be talking about Lilius. This week, I think that's all we need to talk about. Beside her own event, we're gonna be building her, busy building her, and finding out strategies and testing. So I think this is gonna be a big one. If you haven't checked out the official Epic 7 Lilius introduction video, of course, with the background music makes it all super hype. She's really solid. If you guys have seen her in the Heroes Journal, there have been multiple content creators creating already, some thoughts on her. But here are my thoughts on her. For one thing, she's a Fire Knight, and given the largely ice meta, but I think things are shifting since Euphine, Lilibeth, and Bazaar got buffs. Things are a bit shifting. I think the meta is a lot more balanced now. With Fire now being introduced, could be interesting. The thing is, I don't think she has a problem surviving ice heroes. That's the good part. Notice that her star sign is Aries, so same as Fire Cecilia and Tywin. Some basic stats. Her base stats are 821 attack, which is pretty high, actually, pretty high for a knight. Only falls about 100 under Charles, which is meant to be a damage dealer. We'll get to that in a bit, but health is 6,751 and speed is 110. So very fast for a knight. I think that is almost the second fastest knight, and the defense is 648. There's an initial increase in her effectiveness at 18%. I believe that comes from her last awakening, if it's the same as Tywin. But definitely very, very usable. Although I'm not 100% sure about chasing effectiveness on her. But that's the thing about her, is that I think there's going to be multiple ways to build her, and as usual for a hero, if they're stat hungry, it's going to be very hard to hit all the minimum requirements, I think. But I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on the build and the stats to aim for based on her kit and what I think is going to be pretty good. So one of the things right now, I think that she's going to be a really good defensive knight. In arena, possibly, but in arena, usually that extra slot means someone can bring an extra healer or some extra tank or extra bait, and that can I think make Lilius less powerful than her kit allows. While in GVG, though, I think it's a totally different story. I think she's going to be a knight that will be appearing in a lot of people's GVG defense comps. Now, at the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure, but quick theory cross based on her skill, most likely someone, at least one hero in the defensive team with a pretty high attack. Now we're going to go through her skills, and I'm going to talk a bit about her build, and just to think about what kind of stats you want to aim for, because right now there's a lot of things that's confusing me, and I talked about this throughout the week on streams and even on Discord with people that have interacted with me. So for example, like the S1, whenever she does it, she'll trigger a dual attack from a random ally, and there's initial damage increase on her own skill. It's a 0.8 times mod with a 12% max health. That is strong. That is as strong as ML Cecilia's S3. So if you guys have dealt with ML Cecilia's, Fallen Cecilia's in GVG defense, and they're bruisers, so they have crit damage, you know how much that can hit. And this is a bit stronger, I think about 10% stronger from the attack mod, but the health mod is the exact same. So 12% health scaling, 0.8% attack mod, that can do a lot of damage. So that is where I'm kind of hesitant, do you build her as a bruiser herself? Because ML Cecilia, although she has 7,000 base HP, while Lilius has about 6,700, ML Cecilia with a crit damage necklace can still reach 20,000 HP quite easily. Of course, that's without the speed boot. And that's the other thing about Lilius, is that because of her high base speed and her kit, it almost feels like she want to capitalize on the high speed. So if you have a speed boot and you have a HP ring, it's going to be difficult. And then the other thing is, like, would you run an effect resistance ring on her? And again, I'm going to continue and go on why I think those are some options. Anyways, we'll have to do some tests. So the dual attack from the S1, does it proc on a counter? Does it proc on Elbrus? Now, so far, for example, Tamarine and Kitty Clarissa, they don't proc the dual attack if they counter. And Tamarine, if she dual attacks, she doesn't proc her idol form's S1. So they don't proc a dual attack, of course, on a dual attack or a counter. But the thing is, Elbrus sometimes has a different mechanic to the counter. So I'm kind of half. If it 100% does proc a dual attack from a random ally with Elbrus's counter, so counter set is out of the question. So we don't need to think about it. I think if Elbrus does proc it, Elbrus will be her best in slot. If there is no Elbrus, to be honest, I think she can actually be a decent Aureus holder, because her kit allows her to, and for her to sustain like more damage from the allies is very, very beneficial. So I think, looking at Hill like Lance, what else? Adamant Shield maybe, I don't know, but I think Aureus could be a very, very good one for her. I think she's an Aureus Knight, if Elbrus doesn't work that way. And her S2 is like a Falconer Cleary type of provoke, but her provoke, I think, in a way, it's more or less more useful than Falconer Cleary's, because she grants a barrier to herself. Now, there's no data, even looking at the data mine, there's no data on how this barrier is scaled. Is it like a flat HP? Is it scaled on HP? It's not written in the description on the screen here. It's not also written in the description in the game as well. So I'm not quite sure how much that barrier is, but if you take a look at the video that they had, that barrier looked pretty beefy, since the barrier is usually relative to the amount of HP that Lilias has. So it looked pretty good. It looked like a solid, I don't know, like 2k barrier. But I'll probably have to go back and take a look. But you guys can take a look at it as well, just in case. But yeah, it depends how that scales. But of course, the idea is, you have the enemy provoke and hit her, and with the barrier, she has extra survivability, so it pretty much nullifies their attack. Now, of course, the provoke only does provoke them to do their S1, so they can't waste like an S3, for example, strategically. But you could definitely force some interesting things. Like, for example, if there's another Lilius on your team, on their team rather, you can have her provoke to your Lilius, so that she doesn't proc some like Luna into some other of your DPS or something like that, just in case. And that is where I think that Lilius also having high resistance is very important. So decently high effectiveness, but I really don't think that it should be super, super high. Most of the time, you're going to be provoking DPS, and DPS generally don't run super high effect resistance anyway. So having her, especially in her innate stats, already has 18% effectiveness. So that's pretty easy. You top it off with like a couple substats here and there with 10, 15 effectiveness, and you can get a very, very solid effectiveness hero. Now, the thing is, I don't think she's like Falconer Cleary, where Falconer Cleary is almost used just for her provoke and the defense break. Keep that in mind. So for Falconer Cleary, having her with really, really high effectiveness, I think is a lot more beneficial than Lilius, because in a way, Cleary is usually not just the provoke, it's for the defense break. So I don't think we can like compare, them together and saying that, oh yeah, because they have a similar provoke skill, therefore, she should have over 100% effectiveness. I think her kit allows her to be way stronger with other stats. But that's my thoughts. 100% on the S2 to be able to grant a provoke. So I think that definitely has to be a skill to be maxed. Judging by her S1, I think if it does as much as ML Cecilia's S3 with a crit damage necklace, I think that this can actually be a max mullet S1 for Knight as well, which is surprising to me. But definitely, if you take a look at the mods, you compare how much damage ML Cecilia does, it really makes sense to make her a bruiser as well. You know, why not? If she's already going to make the rest of your team like really strong. So she's a very aggressive hero. If you take a look at the S3, dispels all debuffs. We're taking a look at just the After Awakening portion. Dispels all debuffs from all allies, and then commands the Perlin army to fire upon all enemies. So it's AoE. It does CR pushbacks 25%. So this is where maybe you want a bit more effectiveness as well. It's very, very nice to have. But of course, if that doesn't push back, you will grant yourself a 50%, just the caster herself, 50% CR boost. So halfway in the next turn, if she's built fast, that can come really quick and it can become very annoying. So on a defensive team, I think Lilias can be really good. On an offensive team, she can be really good as well. And I'm talking about GVG. I think for arena offensive team, no problem. She's going to be very meta Knight. If you're talking about defensive team on arena, I think she might suffer a bit. That's just my thought right off the top of the head. But GVG wise, I think offensive and defensive, she's going to be very, very good. Very good. The dispel all debuffs, this is where I think that her having high effect resistance will be helpful. And like I said, other Liliuses, you want to kind of prevent, especially if they're on the AI. If you're using her on an offensive team comp and there is a defensive Lilius, Lilius would be one of those heroes you can actually bring your own Lilius to. I know that sometimes in some fights you don't want to bring the exact same hero to face the other hero, maybe like ML Vodrid or something like that versus ML Vodrid. But for herself, I think it would be very important. So having her with high effect resistance will prevent her from the AI being able to provoke her or anyone else, depends on who you bring. But you have the opportunity to ignore the effect resistance while the AI doesn't. So that's also interesting to think about. I think, to be honest, the other thing is that her S3, because it scales based on the hero with the highest attack. There is no damage mod in particular here, but in the data mine, and thank you for the data miner for all this, 90% of the highest attack on the allies attack, 90% scaled. So if you brought, let's say, Luna in there, now how is this scaling work? We got a couple questions until we can see the hero, but how does the scaling work? Does it scale with Luna's passive as well? And does it scale post attack buff? I'm assuming it scales post attack buff because all the mechanics and all the skills that aim for the highest attack. So for example, like Tamarine's idle form S1, if you do it, the dual attack is based on the highest attack. So if you had like Luna, it does actually work off Luna's passive. I have tested this. It does work off Luna's passive, but it does take in which kind of attack buff is on. So for example, if my Luna had 4k attack and her passive grants 30% more, my Surmia has 40% attack, but both have attack buff, Tamarine will trigger Luna's dual attack. If Surmia has a greater attack buff, it will trigger Surmia instead. So how this works, I'm not quite sure, but if the case is that it does scale off attack buff, which I'm thinking it would, but does it scale off Luna's attack passive or any other type of invisible attack stack? I'll call it that, invisible attack stack. So for example, like heroes with Violet Talisman. Violet Talisman, 3 turns, you get 30% extra attack, but that can be stackable with attack buff. Like, does it stack there? If it does, it's going to be crazy because if you run her on a crit damage necklace, she will be your bruiser. She will be your go-to bruiser. She will be like, so for example, put it this way, although there is no damage mods, we'll just assume that I don't know how would this even work. How would this even work in the damage formula? I guess, yeah, straight heroes attack, but because you're not multiplying it by damage mod. I don't know how that works, but you can imagine that it could be very strong. Now in the data mine, I have to say that there is a little note. I don't think he changed it, but he said might have 70% armor penetration. I don't know. Lol. We'll ignore that. I think a 70% defense penetration would be very OP based on the way it's reading right now. And again, if you have oh yeah, someone mentioned Hellcutter. Yeah, Hellcutter could be, yeah, it's an invisible stacking artifact as well. Yeah, I was thinking about skills and artifacts together, but yeah, you guys get my point. Does it work, right? Does it work? And if you have a crit damage necklace on her, man, I wonder if that's a viable build. The thing is, I really want to see effect resistance on her as well. But if you have her fast as a damage dealer, you might not need the effect resistance. I think it depends. It depends. And so yes, my thoughts on her is that she's insanely good, overpowered. I would say overpowered kit. And it really forces you to think about her build in multiple ways. And I think in the next couple weeks, especially from high-end players, so you know, I got a couple high-end players in my Discord as well. It'd be interesting to see their theory craft and their take on the skills, like what stats they aim for. In terms of stats, I think, you know, I think you have to decide. You want to go effectiveness, you want to go effect resistance, you want to go speed, you want to go HP, you want to go crit damage. I think the differences is going to be the amount of speed you want to put in, or the amount of crit damage you want to put in, or the amount of effect resistance you want to put into her. Like I said, I don't think the effectiveness is super high priority, but you know, that's my style. That's my style of play, and I think some people will go 100% effectiveness, or even more, just for the CR pushback, just for the provoke. But I think it really depends how you want to build her. It's just like a Fallen Cecilia right now. There's no one build. Some people have run crit damage necklace. Some people even ran crit chance necklace on ML Cecilia. And of course, some people run HP necklace. So it depends on how you want to build her. I would say that one of her highest priorities is speed. So for sure, speed set. How you want to finish off that set depends if you want to make her a bruiser. I think that for a first turn immunity set might be good if you don't want high effect resistance. First turn immunity, so most likely you can actually cleanse the debuff on the S3. What's good is that even if Bazaar, so for example, like someone runs Bazaar, it might miss her, but even if it does land and it grants the unbuffable, she can dispel the debuff, so that's pretty nice. Unless he runs unless Bazaar runs like what's it called, Sierra Ren. So yeah, anyways, I'll try to build her up as fast as possible and do a demo of it, but definitely I'm gonna do some tests. Some of the tests I want to talk about was of course the crit damage. That's the biggest thing, and then the Elbrus Ritual Sword. How does it work with your S1? I highly doubt it works. That would be way too overpowered. You just imagine how much randomness can be added to a GVG defense comp. I want to talk about her artifact a bit, and I think I'm pretty much gonna end because there's not much to this other news video. This is a very strong artifact. It can be used for her as well. Like I said, I think she could be a really good Aureus Knight, but if you got this artifact and you got it to a pretty high enhancement level, let's say you got multiples, I would say run this instead of Aureus. Granted that the rest of your team gotta be bruisery though. They gotta be bruisery in order to survive the attack from the enemy. And I'm thinking mainly on a defensive team. I think on an offensive team, you can control the fight a lot better, that you don't really need to have this artifact on Lilias, but although it's a nice to have regardless. So if you're too lazy, or you know, you think it's too expensive to swap artifacts going into fights and stuff, maybe have this on her as a permanent. But at the start of the battle, so just like Fallen Cecilia, grants a barrier equivalent to 30% of the caster's max health to the ally with the highest attack for 2 turns. Can you imagine that? That is just insanely strong. So if you put like a 20,000 if she has 20,000 HP, 30%, and this is max limit broken, of course, you keep that in mind. So if you're not a will, of course, Max plus 15 would be the, looking at this, would be what, 20%? 20%, I think. Or yeah, I think somewhere about there, or a bit over 20%. Put that onto, like, let's say a Luna on your team if you've got her. And Luna already has pretty beefy bruiser stats. Even if she's made out of full damage dealer. Mine's a full damage dealer. My Luna easily has 12k HP. Very, very easily. And you can imagine that barrier on her. That will mitigate any type of first turn cleave. I think. Unless it's a double turn cleave. But it's really good. So if you have this artifact on, because it only grants the barrier to only one hero, I think would be interesting is that you could run some other type of support or another very high HP bruiser, but with a really high damage hero. So I'm talking about just for like GVG defense. Anyways, it's kind of the sky's the limit right now. I'm very excited about her. I haven't been so excited about a hero because I feel like they're, other than ML heroes, they're lacking some defensive heroes, and I think she's meant to be a very, very strong defensive hero. The other thing I got to notice, mentioned here, and it's not shown. Okay, they don't have that screen, but is that her imprint. Her imprint is an attack imprint, 2 slots, top and left. So top slot and left slot, attack imprint. If you get this to a triple S, it's a 12.9% attack. Now, for her imprint really benefits, especially, again, it's 2 slots, for GVG again. So what I really like about this, of course, it does her imprint actually works well with her kit, because, you know, pumping up the attack of your allies is going to make her stronger. And of course, you know, depending how to position your heroes, maybe you don't want both of your DPS on the defense team to be in the imprint slot. Maybe you want to skyrocket a certain hero's attack. Let's say if you did get triple S Lilius, you can force one hero to gain from the imprint and not have the other. Now, you know, right off the top of my head, you'd be asking, Dragon, why would I ever do that? I'm not 100% sure, but it can work. It can work. I've seen people do that with like fire Shuri, or I'll say Shuri. I keep calling it Skuri, so people are telling me to pronounce it right. If you have, I see people that use fire Shuri for that 2 slot speed imprint, and they, you know, depending on how they want to speed throttle or speed tune their team, they actually remove someone from like one of the slots, so that only one of them benefit from it. So it's quite interesting. So I really like this aspect. As for myself, you know, whether or not, you know, you guys will be asking like, well, are you gonna triple S her? I don't think so, but I think I'm gonna pull as far as I can get this artifact. I think that this artifact, don't miss it while it's up. Now, of course, because this is not a limited banner, I think if you are free to play and you are, you know, pulling on this banner and you're pulling lightly, just don't bother with it. I don't think it's gonna be like a Rengar specialty drink type of artifact where like that's just a really, really strong artifact. Especially now, after a month or so, people are realizing Rengar specialty drink is such an OP artifact, especially on SS Bologna. So I don't think you need to chase this one. For limited artifacts, sometimes I would, you know, suggest try to chase it even as a free to play, but it's really hard. I get it. But that's my thoughts on the artifact. Definitely a good one. If you are pulling for Lilius, you get the artifact first. Consider yourself lucky. Because it's not limited, it will one day come to the powder shop. It will one day come in a mystic rotation. So if you do miss it this time, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. I do think that Aureus is a really good option for her. Side story event. Not much special to talk about here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to end. That's my thoughts on Lilius, if you guys were wondering what my thoughts were. But I'm pretty sure she's a really solid pull. Definitely go for her. She's very strong. If you have limited resources and you're waiting for a limited hero, hope you guys can get her off some daily or some off banner in the future. But I guess off banners would only be covenants. But anyways, I'm gonna end this here. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next Reading Between the Lines.